certificate! No, no, no. What have you done? What have you done?
Madam, why are you shouting? That is my son. That is my son. Sorry, is it not just paper? We will buy you another one.
Buy another one? Madam, there is no other one. This paper was my whole life.
Have you ever been one morning away from your miracle? Not 1 year, not 1 month, one morning. That was Teniola. After 10 years of closed doors, a company finally said yes. Bring your original certificate tomorrow and collect your letter. That night, she could not even sleep. She ironed her best clothes. She prayed. She thanked God. Then, on her way there, she stopped to eat at a quiet canteen. She rushed out to catch a bus and forget the folder on the chair. She remembered halfway down the road and ran back 3 minutes, just 3 minutes. And a child she had never met had already torn her future into pieces. Now, maybe you have never lost a certificate, but I know you know that feeling when something you cannot see keeps scattering your blessing at the very last second. The job that was already yours, the helper that suddenly stopped picking your calls, at the edge, never at the beginning. Teniola cried to heaven for an answer, and the answer came from the last place anybody would look. An old woman roasting corn on the outskirts of town, carrying a secret older than Teniola herself. And when Teniola heard it, she fell on her knees and understood every closed doors of her life. This is that story. Stay with me because today's answer may be your answer too. Hello besties, you are welcome to Faith Tales by More, where every story is real, every lesson is earned, and God always has the final say. My people, before we enter today's story, I need to be honest with you. This one touched me because I know somebody watching right now has an invisible wall in their life. You have felt it. Every time you are about to succeed, you eat it. You can see the door opening. You can almost touch the testimony. And then, out of nowhere, something scatters everything. And the painful part, people around you keep saying, pray more, work harder, as if you have not prayed, as if you have not worked. Teniola prayed, Teniola worked, and what she discovered instead is something nobody ever taught her in church. So please, wherever you are, sit down, grab a cup of water, because today we are not just telling a story, we are looking for an answer. Let's go in together. Now, let me tell you about Teniola. And please, don't rush past this part because you cannot understand what happened in that canteen until you understand what that certificate was carrying. Teniola was 33, first child of Papa and Mama Adeyemi. And listen to this, the first person in her entire family line to ever enter a university. The first. Do you know what that means in a Nigerian home? It means you have stopped being an ordinary child. You are now the investment, the retirement plan, the answer to every midnight prayer your parents ever prayed on a cold floor. Our father, Papa Adeyemi. Let me tell you about this man because he deserves it. A carpenter, quiet, rough palms, bent back from 30 years of bending over other people's furniture. This was a man who wore the same brown trousers to work for 6 years. 6 years, my people. So his daughter could buy textbooks. And when Teniola gained admission, this man did something that still touches me. He sold his best saw, the one he called his right hand. He pressed the money into her palm at the motor park, held her hand small, and said one sentence. Tenny, when you finish, we will all rest. When you finish, we will all rest. Carry that sentence with you, because for 10 years, Teniola carried it every single day, and it was heavier than any load. And Mama Tenny, God bless that woman. She sold provisions on a wooden table in front of the house. Sardines, matches, small sachets of milk arranged like soldiers. Every night under that yellow kerosene light, she counted her small profit and set aside Teniola's transport money for interviews. Even in months, when no interview was coming, she still set it aside. Some people will call that faith. I call it a mother sometimes. Tell me, is there even a difference? So, Teniola graduated well. She finished her NYC in Kaduna and came home with her certificate, in a blue leather folder, and that compound danced. Neighbors came out. Somebody bought minerals. Papa Adeyemi wore his Sunday agbada on a Tuesday. On a Tuesday. Oh. My people, that was 10 years ago. 10 years, and it pained me to tell you what followed. Applications nobody answered. Interviews that ended with, "We'll get back to you." And you and I know what that sentence means. She taught in a small private school for 15,000 naira a month. She sold recharge cards. She learned bead making. Nothing grew. But here is the part that used to keep her awake. It was not that doors never came. Doors came, beautiful doors, the kind her mate would fast 40 days just to smell. But every single time, something scattered it at the final moment. Not at the beginning, not in the middle, at the edge, always at the edge. The family called it bad luck, then delay. People called it the devil being wicked. But nobody stopped to ask the question that mattered. Why always at the edge? Hold that question tight, because the day of the passport is coming. So now, come with me to the year everything was supposed to change for her. One ordinary afternoon, and he may entered Teniola's phone, an oil and gas company in the United Kingdom. A real one, my people. She had applied 8 months before and forgotten about it. You know how we forget the things we are afraid to hope for. That kind of forgetting. Then 3 online interviews later, the word came true. Congratulations. The position is yours. All they needed was a visa. Can you imagine the noise in that compound that evening? Mama Tenny knelt in front of her wooden table and cried into her wrapper. Papa Adeyemi could not even talk properly. He just kept walking up and down saying, "God has remembered us. God has remembered us." And honestly, who would blame him? This was not just a job. This was the harvest of a sowed soul. The harvest of 30 years of bent backs. Tell me, how would you have slept in that house that night? Nobody slept. And Teniola did not carry it carelessly. Oh no, she entered a 21-day fast, 21 days. She prayed over the visa forms. She prayed over her home passport photograph. On the embassy morning, she woke by 4, prayed by 5, and by 7, she was on the road, holding a brown envelope against her chest, the way a mother holds a newborn. Now, watch her closely, because this is where my heart starts to squeeze. Inside the embassy, she sat on a plastic chair and opened the envelope one last time. You know how we do it. Everything is complete, but you still check, just to be sure. Her green passport was right there. She touched it with her own 2 fingers. She closed the envelope. 2 minutes later, the speaker called her number. Window 4. She walked there smiling. The officer stretched out his hand. "Your passport, please." She opened the envelope, and her hand met empty space. My people, she looked inside. She turned the envelope upside down and shook it. She emptied her whole bag on that counter. Pens rolling everywhere. A small Bible falling flat against the glass. Nothing. She went back and searched that plastic chair. She knelt on the embassy floor and searched like a woman looking for her own life, while other applicants turned their faces away in pity. Even security joined her. Almost 1 hour inside a locked embassy. Between one chair and one window, a whole passport disappeared. And it pains me to even say this part. The appointment was cancelled. The company waited 2 weeks. 2 weeks, then gave the position to somebody else. Somebody who did not fast 21 days. Somebody whose father did not sell his best soul. And Teniola had to sit in that compound every evening and watch her parents pretend they were not heartbroken. Have you ever watched your own mother pretend for your sake? It is a particular kind of pain. But wait, because even that is not what shook her the most. That evening, she dragged herself to her bedroom and stopped dead at the door. There, sitting quietly in the middle of her neatly made bed, was the passport. Think about that for a moment. Nobody entered that room. She made that bed herself at dawn and left it empty. Teniola stood in that doorway for a long time, and somewhere deep inside her, in a place she did not want to visit, one small thought whispered, "This thing following me is not ordinary." She pushed the thought away, my people. She should not have. Now, my people, I wish I could tell you that the passport was the worst thing that happened to Teniola that year. I wish, but sit with me because I have to tell you about Brother Samuel. Samuel was the assistant pastor of our church. Tall, gentle voice, always ironed, the kind of brothers that mothers point at during Thanksgiving and whisper to their daughters, that one, marry that one. Oh. And for 2 whole years, he and Teniola were what everybody called the perfect kingdom couple. They led evangelism together. They fasted together. When Teniola got the UK job, Samuel stood in front of the whole congregation and testified. He said, God is preparing our home. Our home. The wedding was already being discussed. Ashwebi color, October date, everything. Then the passport happened. And listen carefully to this part because this is where it gets painful. From the very week Teniola lost that job, Samuel changed overnight. He stopped picking her calls, stopped replying her messages. In the church, he greeted her the way you greet a stranger, Sister Teniola, with a small nod and a quick escape. Tell me, have you ever watched somebody unlove you in real time? Because that is what she watched slowly, publicly. And after 2 weeks of silence, Teniola did what any of us would do. She went to his house a Tuesday evening. She knocked. Samuel opened the door, and my people, he did not even ask her to come in. He stood in that doorway with a very serious face, holding the door half closed like she came to collect debt. Teniola looked at him with tired eyes. Samuel, you did not call me back. Samuel looked down at his own feet. Then he said the words, Sister Teniola, the Lord has been speaking to me. I went on a retreat concerning our marriage, and while I was praying, I saw a heavy cloud of darkness covering your head. The Lord is saying I should step aside from this union. A heavy cloud of darkness. That is what he said to a woman who fasted 21 days. A woman who led evangelism beside him in the rain. He did not say let us pray about it together. He did not say let us fight this thing side by side. He stepped back inside and she heard the lock click from the inside. Teniola stood in front of that closed door for a long time. And I will be honest with you, I did not know which one wounded her more, losing Samuel or the small voice in her chest whispering, what if he actually saw something? Because here is the thing nobody in that church noticed. First the job, then the passport, now the man. 1 year, 3 doors, all of them slammed at the edge. And the next door was going to close in a canteen, in broad daylight, in the hands of a small boy. Stay with me. Now, after Samuel, Teniola disappeared into herself for months. She stopped raising her hands during worship. She still came to church. The body came, but my people, the heart stayed home. And can you blame her? Then one Thursday, Mercy looked her way, or so it seemed. A big corporate firm on the island called her for an interview, and this one was different. She entered that office and answered every question like her life depended on it, because it did. When it ended, the HR manager did something HR people rarely do. She stood up, shook Teniola's hand warmly, and said, "You are exactly who we need. Come back tomorrow morning with your original certificate and collect your letter tomorrow morning." After 10 years, tomorrow morning. Teniola floated out of that building. She called Mama Tenny from the roadside, and the two of them were laughing and crying at the same time on the phone. You know that kind of call where nobody is saying complete sentences. That kind. The next morning, she dressed in her best, blue leather folder under her arm. Inside it, her original university certificate and her original NYSC certificate. Her whole life in one folder. On the way, hunger reminded her she had not eaten since the day before. So, she stopped at a small quiet canteen to eat before the appointment. She sat, she ordered. She ate quickly, one eye on the time. Then, she picked her bag and rushed out to catch a bus and left the folder sitting on the chair. She was halfway down the road when her heart suddenly stopped. The folder. She turned and ran back. She ran. but 3 minutes had already passed 3. From the canteen doorway, she saw it, a little boy sitting on the dusty floor, a folder open beside him, and in his small hand a certificate, a NYSC certificate, going rip. She screamed from that doorway, "My certificate, what have you done?" But it was already too late. Her legs could not carry her fast enough. By the time she reached him, the certificate was in pieces and the boy was laughing, waving the shreds like toys. The boy's mother rushed over and instead of apology, "Madam, why are you shouting? Is it not just paper? We will buy you another one." Just paper. 10 years, 3 minutes, just paper. But wait, because here is the part that finished her. She knelt on that dusty floor, gathering what remained, and pulled out her university certificate, the main one. It was not torn, thank God, but look at it, rumpled, greased across the middle. Dust walked into the paper, one corner bent like a dog's ear. My people, be honest with me. Can you walk into a corporate office on your first morning and hand them a certificate looking like it slept under a bridge? They will not hear any story about any canteen. They will look at that paper and see one thing, a careless woman. And nobody gives a corner office to a careless woman. So Teniola stood outside that canteen at a crossroads only she could see. The office was 15 minutes away. Her letter was waiting, and she turned around and went home. That evening, she did something that still breaks my heart. She bought sellotape from the shop next door, and under the yellow kerosene light, this 33-year-old graduate sat on the floor, joining the pieces of her NYSC certificate together, piece by piece, line by line. Not because she could ever present it again. She knew she couldn't. She taped it because she needed to see it whole. And when she finished, she held it up to the light, cracked lines running everywhere, still in one piece, but broken in every place that mattered. She looked at it for a long time because, my people, it looked exactly like her life. Now, the Sunday after the canteen, Teniola did not want to go to church. Be honest with me, would you have gone after the passport, after Samuel, after watching a child wave the shred of your future like toys? But Mama Tenny did not reach that morning. She just sat on the edge of the bed and said, "Tenny, I cannot carry this one for you, but I can sit beside you. Come, let us go." Sometimes that is all the sermon a broken person can receive. So she went. She sat at the very back row. You know that back row where the wounded sit, arms folded, heart folded too. During worship, everybody around her was singing, but Teniola just moved her lips without sound. And I want you to know something. God saw her exactly there, not at the altar, at the back, in the folded arms. That Sunday, there was a guest minister, an older man, grey beard, soft voice, no shouting, no drama, the kind that carries fire quietly. He was preaching about Joseph, pit, and prisons on the way to the palace, and then, right in the middle of his sentence, he stopped. Complete silence, the kind where you can hear the ceiling fan. He looked towards the back of the church and said, "There is somebody here. I do not know your face, but I know your pattern. You are always at the verge of glory, always at the edge, and every time, at the last moment, something caught the rope." My people, Teniola's whole body went cold. Mama Tenny gripped her hand so hard it hurt. Because how? How does a man who has never met you read out your life? The minister continued softly. You have prayed, you have fasted, you have served, and you are starting to believe God is not with you. But hear me, all these years, you have been fighting the fruit. The lost job is a fruit. The scattered relationship is a fruit. You have never asked about the root, and any tree you fight at the fruit level will simply produce again next season. Write that one down, my people. Any tree you fight at the fruit level will produce again next season. This is why some battles keep coming back with new faces. Then came the sentence that turned Teniola's life. Stop asking God, why me? That question has no power. Ask him instead, what is this? The Holy Spirit is the ultimate revealer. Whatever he reveals, he can heal. But he will not heal what you refuse to let him reveal. He did not call anybody out. He simply stretched his hand and said, if that word is for you, come. And Teniola, proud, tired, angry at heaven, Teniola felt her legs stand up before her mind agreed. She walked down the aisle with tears dropping on the floor tiles. Tap, tap, tap. She knelt at the altar and for the first time in 1 year, she was not asking for a job, a visa, a husband. She whispered into the carpet, Lord, what is this? Show me the route. And heaven, silent for 10 years, heard her clearly because within days, the Holy Spirit was going to point her towards a dusty road on the outskirts of town to a pan of roasting corn and a secret older than Teniola herself. Stay with me. We are entering the deep part now. Now, after that altar, Teniola did not just go home and sleep, no. She entered 3 days of dry fasting. No food, no water, just a Bible and one question, Lord, what is this? And on the 3rd evening, as she was praying, something dropped into her spirit, not a voice from the sky. You know how the Holy Spirit talks, quiet, sudden, and impossible to forget. One sentence, ask about your father's house, her father's house. And immediately, one face appeared in her mind. Auntie Grace, Papa Adeyemi's younger sister, living on the outskirts of town. The aunt the family only mentioned in low tones. So, the next morning, Teniola traveled. And my people, let me tell you about Auntie Grace because her life is a whole sermon on its own. This woman married twice in her lifetime, 4 children between 2 homes, and both marriages scattered like everything else she ever built. The shop she opened, it burned. The land she bought, one family dispute swallowed it. Now, she sat in front of a rented room, roasting corn over a small fire, selling to passers-by. A woman who had simply surrendered not to God but to faith. And believe me, those are 2 very different surrenders. Teniola greeted her, sat on the low bench beside the fire, and went straight to it. Auntie, I need you to tell me the truth today. What happened in our family? Why does everything die at the edge? Auntie Grace did not even look up. She just kept turning the corn. Tenny, leave these old stories alone. Face your life. Auntie, I have no life to face. That is why I came. Then Auntie Grace sighed, the kind of heavy sigh that carries 40 years inside it, and wiped her face with a wrapper. You want the truth? Fine. Your great-grandfather, before any one of us were born, he wanted wealth and he went to a shrine for it, and the covenant he made there had a price. The wealth would come to him, but no daughter of that bloodline would ever carry blessings beyond the family compound. Whatever we build scatter at the edge. His own daughters, me, your father's other sisters, and now you. Teniola's heart was pounding. Auntie, but you knew this. Why did you never fight it? You used to go to church? And my people, this is where it broke my heart. Auntie Grace laughed, a dry, bitter laugh, with no single drop of joy inside it. Church, she said, I was in the choir before you were born. I fasted until my eyes turned red. I sowed seeds I could not afford. Nothing changed, so I stopped fighting. At least, corn does not disappoint me. You roast it, it turns brown, you sell it. Finish. She turned back to her fire. Conversation over. And Teniola sat there on that low bench, watching the smoke rise, with 2 heavy things in her hands. The truth at last, the root, named, and beside it, a warning, wearing a wrapper, because Auntie Grace was not just a aunt. She was a picture of what surrender looks like after the battle has beaten you. Teniola looked at her one more time, thanked her quietly, and stood up. And somewhere on that long road home, she made up her mind. She now knew the route. But knowing a route, my people, and killing a route are 2 very different things. And that is where I have to pause today's story. But before you go, think about this one thing with me. 2 women, 1 bloodline, 1 covenant. Auntie Grace fasted until her eyes turned red. Auntie Grace sowed seeds she could not afford, and the covenant swallowed her anyway. So tell me honestly, what can Tenny possibly do that her aunt did not already try? The answer to that question shook me when I first heard the story, because what broke those covenants was not more fasting, It was not a louder prayer. It was something Teniola found in one psalm, something most of us have been missing our whole lives. Part 2 is coming, and believe me, you do not want to hear it from somebody else. So subscribe right now and tap the bell so the moment it drops, you are the first person to enter. And in the comments, tell me, have you ever seen this pattern of the hedge in your own family? Let us talk. Until next time on Faith Taste by More, stay prayerful, stay guided, stay focused. Bye.